Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered how your brain handles talking to a whole group of people at once? It turns out that after a brain injury, this simple everyday skill can become surprisingly challenging. Today, we're diving into some fascinating research that looks at how people who have experienced moderate to severe traumatic brain injuries, or TBI, manage conversations with more than one person. It's all about something called multi-party audience design. Think about it. When you talk to friends, you adjust what you say based on what they know. But what happens when you're talking to a crowd where everyone knows different things? And how does a TBI affect that? Let's find out. This study was a team effort, and they wanted to understand if TBI messes with our ability to adjust our communication when we're talking to multiple people. So, what exactly is multi-party audience design in simple terms? It's our amazing capacity to tailor our message to different people in a group, considering what each person already knows. The researchers here wanted to see if this ability gets disrupted after a TBI. Scientists have known for a while that when we talk to just one person, we change how we speak depending on what we think they know. For example, if you and a friend have been talking about a specific movie, you might start referring to it as that movie or the film because you know your friend knows exactly which movie you mean. More recently, researchers have learned that even when we're talking to a group, we're pretty good at managing those different knowledge levels. We can switch between what we say to one person versus another within the same conversation. It is like our brain has multiple little tabs open, one for each person we're talking to. But here is the new part. People who have had a moderate to severe traumatic brain injury often struggle with social communication. The researchers here wondered if the added complexity of talking to multiple people, each with their own knowledge level, would be particularly tough for them. They used a clever game to figure this out. Imagine you're the director and you have to describe pictures to two people called matchers. They got 30 people who had experienced moderate to severe TBI and 30 people with no brain injury, called the comparison group, to play this game. First, in something called the sorting phase, the participants, acting as the director, had to describe a set of abstract images to two matchers. These matchers' job was to arrange the images in the same order as the director. They did this over and over, 4 times, so that by the end, everyone would have a shared understanding or label for each image. This is how they built common ground, or that shared knowledge between the director and the matchers. Then came the test phase. Here, the director had to describe the same images again, but this time to different pairs of matchers. The twist was that these matchers had different levels of knowledge about the image labels. In one setup, both matchers knew the labels from the sorting phase. In another, both matchers were completely new or naive to the labels. And in a third setup, one matcher knew the labels and the other didn't, a mixed group. The researchers were watching closely, measuring 3 things about the director's speech: how long their descriptions were, whether they used definite words like the or that, and how often they paused or repeated themselves, which are called disfluencies. Let's get to the findings. In the sorting phase, where they were building that shared knowledge, the group with TBI didn't get quite as good at efficiently describing the images over the rounds compared to the comparison group. They didn't show the same speed up in making their descriptions shorter and clearer as they learned the labels. Now, for the test phase, when talking to groups where at least one person was new to the labels, both the comparison group and the TBI group did make adjustments. They generally spoke longer, had more disfluencies, and used fewer definite references when talking to someone who didn't know the labels. This is exactly what you would expect, right? You need to be more careful and descriptive with someone who's in the dark. However, and this is a big however, the amount of adjustment that the TBI group made was much smaller than the comparison group. It was as if they were trying to adjust, but not as much as they needed to for the situation. So, what does this all mean? The study concludes that people with moderate to severe TBI have a harder time adjusting their spoken language for multi-party conversations. They might struggle to tailor their message to people with different knowledge levels. This can lead to communication breakdowns in everyday situations like work, school, and even talking with family and friends. This research fills a really important gap because most studies on communication after TBI have focused on talking to just one person. Multi-party communication is super common, but it is way more complex. Think about it. Audience design is complex. It involves understanding yourself and others, and constantly comparing who knows what. TBI can affect attention, memory, and the ability to understand others' perspectives, all of which are crucial for this skill. In the sorting phase, the TBI group was less efficient. They didn't shorten their descriptions as much over time, and they were less likely to use those specific words when they should have. This suggests they might have more trouble building that shared understanding than someone without a TBI. But in the test phase, when everyone already knew the labels, the TBI group performed similarly to the comparison group. This suggests they can use shared knowledge if it is already well established. The problems arise when knowledge levels are mixed. The really striking finding is that while both groups adjusted their speech when faced with less knowledgeable listeners, the TBI group's adjustments were just smaller. They didn't ramp up their descriptions or disfluencies as much, nor did they cut back on definite references as much compared to typically developing individuals. This implies they might not be as sensitive to the different knowledge levels within a group. This difficulty in adjusting their language could explain why people with TBI sometimes struggle in group settings. Imagine trying to have a conversation at a noisy party or a team meeting when your brain struggles to keep track of who knows what. It's not about being rude or uninterested. It's a cognitive challenge. This study is important because it shows we can actually study these complex group interactions in a lab setting. And that is crucial for developing better ways to help people with TBI. So, what is the takeaway for real life? Understanding these challenges can help communication partners be more patient and supportive. They might need to repeat information or provide more context, not because they think the person with TBI isn't listening, but because their brain might be having trouble processing multiple levels of information. This research could also lead to better group therapy for people with TBI. Practicing these multi-party communication skills in a safe, structured environment could really help. Of course, like any study, this one has its limitations. The researchers themselves point out that the exact cognitive reasons like specific memory or attention deficits behind these multi-party communication problems in TBI still need more investigation. They also note that the participants were in a fairly stable phase of recovery, and the interactions were in a controlled lab setting, not a real-life dynamic social situation. They also mentioned their companion paper, which looks at how gestures and eye gaze change in these situations. This suggests that the disruptions might happen across different ways we communicate, not just with words. Future research could explore how facial expressions and other nonverbal cues play a role. And that is a good point. TBI affects everyone differently, so more research looking at individual differences within the TBI population is needed. What is really important here is that this study shows that even people with moderate severe TBI who are living their lives, working, and are independent can still have these subtle but significant communication challenges in group settings. It's not always obvious, but it's there. Ultimately, this research is a big step forward in understanding how TBI affects our ability to connect with others in groups. It highlights that while we're great at adjusting our language on the fly, this skill might be compromised after a brain injury, impacting daily life more than we might realize. It opens the door for better assessments and more targeted therapies that could make a real difference for many people. What do you think about these findings? Have you ever noticed someone struggling in a group conversation and wondered why? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating insights into the human mind. See you next time.